If you're in search of an advanced suspension setup for your 2005 through 2023 Toyota Tacoma, excluding the TRD Pro models, this Super Lift 3-inch King Edition suspension lift kit is one that you'll want to check out. Now, this kit is a perfect choice for the Tacoma owner who wants to take their suspension seriously and wants to invest in a quality system for whatever style of off-road driving you're doing, whether it's low-speed crawling or high-speed dune driving. This system is fully adjustable in both height and dampening, so not only are you getting improved clearance, but also a tailored ride to your specific driving style that you're able to change on the fly whenever you need to. It's also a fully inclusive kit and comes with everything that you would need to upgrade to a system like this without any modifications required if you want a custom ride without the custom fab work. This kit features a 3-inch lift in the front and a 1-inch lift in the rear, increasing overall ground clearance and wheel clearance for better approach angles as well as departure angles, allowing a 33-inch tire in the wheel well and creating a more leveled appearance to the Tacoma. Now, while the height here is adjustable in the front, both the front and rear struts and shocks have compression adjustments to modify or dampening on the fly, stiffening or softening the ride for adaptable performance for whatever terrain that you plan on hitting that day. Now, those external reservoirs here and the bigger build that these have also drastically increase the valving compared to stock, as well as some entry-level options for consistent dampening, increased fluid capacity, in addition to a longer lifespan. Now, the kit also includes upper control arms, which may not seem all that fancy, but at this 3-inch height in the front, these are going to make a big improvement in the handling and stability of the front thanks to that flattened out angle. Breaking this kit down when it comes to the construction, we'll start with the upper control arms here. These are made of a steel tubular build with additional gusseting around the inner part here by the joint and by the bushings on either side, of the mounting points on either side for increased strength. And this does come with pre-installed Moog ball joints as well as bushings for a factory feel to the ride. Now, the main event with this lift kit is the shocks and the struts. Both have a large 2.5-inch 6061 aluminum body for good durability and, more importantly, good heat dissipation as well as an increased capacity. So these are going to run cooler for longer, maintaining that performance and consistent performance over time, even if you are beating your truck up pretty bad. Now, these struts and shocks are also completely bolt in. They have a full billet aluminum construction outside of that shock body and a hardened chrome shaft to make sure that everything is durable, rust resistant, and corrosion resistant, especially with this blue anodized coating on most of the components. Now, if we move over to the reservoir here, this is also connected to the main body of the shock with a very large hose to make sure that there is all of the fluid transfer that you need from the body to the reservoir, which again, with that size is going to increase your valving, increase the capacity, increasing performance. Now, this also comes with rear blocks, which are very simple and straightforward for the back. It's going to increase that height in the back. These are made of a cast alloy construction. They're specifically pinned to fit underneath the leaf spring and to fit underneath the axle well. Now, this kit also includes aluminum differential spacers for proper CV angles, custom mounting brackets for the remote reservoirs. These are also made of billet aluminum construction, so you're not going to have to put heavy steel brackets on top or worry about any rusting. And this kit comes with all of the hardware that you need for a complete bolt-on installation with no modifications required. Now, this kit is about $5,100, and that checks out with the level of performance that this kit brings to the table, especially with such a popular shock brand included. Now, King is very well known for their shock performance, and rightfully so, with the quality and construction that you can see here. So you can expect this to be more on the premium side compared to other more entry-level or even mid-level choices. Now, again, the height and compression adjustments are a big feature here, as well as the shock bodies and reservoir, as big as they are, not the standard. So if you're really looking to invest in your suspension, you want some of the best performance that you can get, as far as the ride quality and the dampening is concerned for your truck, and you've got a chunk of change to spend to invest in it, then this is a solid choice to consider. Now, install here is a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter. It is going to take a decent amount of work in order to install this, even though it is bolt-on. So with the right tools and the right setup, it should take about 6 hours or so to get the job done. Now, I do highly recommend an alignment after the installation for proper ride performance and wear for your truck. Now, at this point, we're gonna head over to the shop. We're gonna check out a detailed breakdown on how this kit is bolted up to the Tacoma, whether you are tackling this job yourself or you're just curious about the install. So that is gonna wrap it up for what I have to say. Let's go ahead and get into the install.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, channel locks, a hammer, pry bar, 14 and 19 millimeter ratcheting wrenches, 12, 17, 19, 22, and 27 millimeter wrenches, a flathead screwdriver, vice grips, needle nose pliers, scissors or diagonal cutters, an extension, swivel adapter, 8 millimeter Allen socket, 12, 13, 14, 17, 19, and 22 millimeter sockets, and a pole jack or a floor jack.
What's up, guys? Today we're installing a lift kit on our Tacoma. First, we're going to watch an uninstall video showing you how to remove your factory suspension components, and then I'll meet you right back here for the install.
All right, so the first step in our uninstall, with your truck in the air supported, you're going to remove that front wheel. Now, if you don't have a lift, a jack and jack stand will work fine as long as it's supported safely. Once you've done that, grab a set of needle nose pliers. We're going to remove the cotter pin holding on that nut for our outer tie rod. So to get this cotter pin out, it helps to straighten the other side. Just go ahead and pinch those 2 pins straight. And once you've done that, grab the opening, use some leverage, and just pull it straight out. And now that your cotter pin is removed, you can get a socket on top of here. We're gonna use a 19 millimeter. Go ahead and remove this nut. Now, if the ball joint is fully seated in this part of the knuckle, it's probably not gonna come out from just force down. What you may need to do here, suggest turning that a little bit to give yourself some more room. Rethread on this nut to protect your threads. And then we're just gonna strike this side right here with a hammer to release this ball joint. Once that is released, go ahead and remove that nut again and pull it out of the knuckle. Next up, we're gonna remove the sway bar end link from the knuckle. Now you need to remove this 17 millimeter nut. You can do it with an impact, but if the end link starts to spin, you'll need a 17 millimeter wrench and a 6 millimeter Allen key to hold that end link steady so you can break it loose. Then once your nut is removed, go ahead and remove the end link from the knuckle. Next up, we're gonna be removing this bolt that holds on your brake line bracket, just to give us a little extra slack when we drop our knuckle down. Grab a 12 millimeter socket and get this bolt removed. Remove the bracket out of the knuckle. Next up, we can also remove this second bracket that holds the brake line to the frame. This will give us a little bit more room here. We're using a 12 millimeter wrench just because this line's a little bit in the way. You can use a socket with a swivel as well. And make sure you remove the brake line out of this hole as well. There is a second ABS line that is attached to your upper control arm. What you want to do here is grab a 10 millimeter socket and remove this bolt so that you can remove this bracket as well. Next up, we'll be removing this pin holding on the nut for your upper ball joint. Now on the far side, this might be a little bit hard to see, but there is a tab that you need to release. And once you've released the back part of this clip, grab a needle nose pliers and just pull it straight out. Now you can see the hook part that we had to release right here. It goes around the edge of the nut. Once you remove that, we can remove the nut. Now that we have that pin removed, we can grab a 19mm socket with a swivel extension and remove this nut. We're actually going to leave it on just slightly because we will need to hit this part of the knuckle to release it. You'll want to strike right on the side of the knuckle in order to release this ball joint. Now with a pry bar, we can pry down on that upper control arm, give ourselves a little bit of slack, remove the nut, and then release the upper control arm out of the knuckle. Now we can fully release the knuckle from the upper control arm, but since we have it hanging off to the side here, what we're gonna do is just have a bungee cord support this for now so that we don't damage the axle, which is still attached. We don't need it to fully support, but as long as we're just taking a little bit of the weight off of it, that will be better. Next up, we're gonna be removing the 3 nuts that hold on the top of the strut. Grab a 14mm socket, or we're using a ratcheting wrench here, and get these removed. You can leave one threaded on slightly just to hold that in place. Continue on to remove the rest of them. This one in the back is probably going to be hard to see, but the same process, using your socket or wrench, go ahead and remove it. Now for the bottom of the strut, you'll need a 19mm wrench. And a 19mm socket, and get this nut removed. Now to remove this bolt, right now there's a bit of tension on it from the lower control arm and the strut. Now if you lift up on the lower control arm, you should be able to wiggle it free, and if you don't have a second set of hands, you can grab a rubber mallet and tap it out. In order to make it easier to drop our strut, we are going to lower the sway bar. This step is optional. If you can wiggle that strut out with the sway bar in place, feel free, but this does make it a lot easier. There's 4 12mm bolts holding on this cover. Once that's removed, we can drop the sway bar down and out of the way. Grab a 12mm socket, go ahead and remove all 4 of these bolts. Next up, remove the other 12mm bolts. This one is at the back. Now we're moving on to the front 2 bolts on your skid plate. These are a little bit harder to get to. You can remove this plastic trim piece, or you can just grab an extension and pull it back slightly. Once you're on it, go ahead and remove that with a 12mm socket. Repeat that with your other bolt at the front of the skid plate. Make sure you're supporting this, as this is the last bolt holding it in. Now with all the bolts removed, you can remove this skid plate by pushing it slightly forward. That will unhook the front. Once it's unhooked on both sides, you can bring it down. Now that we have our skid plate removed, we can remove these 2 14mm bolts on each side that hold on the sway bar bracket. Grab a 14mm bolt and get these removed. Now make sure you have something supporting this so you don't let it fall straight down. And now that we have the sway bar mount disconnected on this side, make sure you repeat those steps to disconnect the end link as well as the mount on the opposite side. And once the sway bar is completely disconnected, you can go ahead and slide it out of the way. Now there are 2 brackets there, so it won't come off the truck unless you remove those. But as long as you push this out of the way, we can now remove the strut assembly. We're removing that nut that we had placed on top just to hold it in place. Then we can bring it out and down and remove it off the truck. Now that we have the strut assembly removed, we can remove the control arm by removing that bolt up top. Now to give ourselves a little bit more room, we're gonna remove these two covers. So grab a pop clip removal tool and let's get these off. With your pop clip, just go behind the cover and just go ahead and pop those out. Should be 5 on this back cover here. And these may break when coming out, so you may want to grab a few spares if you're not sure. But go ahead and remove this cover. Now you can repeat that on the other side. Again, we're just removing these so that we have a little bit more room to work with when we're removing that top bolt out of your upper control arm. Same process, get behind the piece and twist to remove these pop clips. Now to remove this large bolt in your upper control arm, what you need to do is grab a 19mm socket and a 19mm wrench and remove the nut on this side. Now to remove this long bolt through the upper control arm, it is a little tricky. Now the factory service manual does say to cut this bolt, but you will need to reuse this for your new kit. So to get this bolt out in one piece, you may have noticed there's a couple pry marks on this part of our pinch weld. What we're gonna do is pry back on this part of the pinch weld and start to push the bolt up and past it. Make sure you leave the washer where it is, because the washer will hang you up. And slowly work your bolt out past that part of the frame. As long as you have clearance on the head of the bolt, you may want to go into the engine bay and check. Another method you can use is grab an extension, a longer one, and go ahead and tap that through with a mallet. This will help you to get the bolt slid through. Again, you want to leave that washer where it is and work your bolt out the front. Now we're in the engine bay and you can see the bolt here is almost all the way extended. We're going to push it to the side and pull it out the rest of the way by hand. Once you do pull that bolt out, your washer is probably going to fall. Once you've done that, go ahead and wiggle the control arm loose and remove it off of your truck. All right, now we're moving on to the rear uninstall. We have our truck in the air and supported with pole jacks. Now, if you don't have a lift, you can use a jack and jack stands as well, as long as you're supporting that rear axle, so we can drop it down and install the shocks and rear lift blocks. First step, you're gonna grab a 17mm socket and wrench, and let's remove the bolt on the bottom of our shock. Now with your 17mm socket and 17mm wrench, go ahead and get this nut removed off your bolt. Now you can wiggle and remove this bolt out of the shock. All right, so now we're gonna get the top part of the shock unbolted. There's a nut up top here that attaches it to the threaded body. Now there is a slotted spot you can hold with a small wrench up top here, and then with a 14mm wrench remove this nut. However, I believe this gets in the way and we can't seem to get this nut off with a wrench up top here. So an alternative, not the best way to do it, but it'll definitely get the job done, is to hold this bottom part with a pair of vice grips. And with your 14mm wrench, go ahead and remove that. Now you can remove the nut up top as well as the bushing and the washer, and then remove the shock off of your truck. Now we're gonna remove the U-bolts off of our truck. Make sure your axle is supported so it doesn't drop down when we remove the nuts on the bottom of the U-bolts here. Grab a 19mm socket and let's get these removed. Now you can remove the bracket and set it aside, and remove both of the U-bolts over the top of your leaf spring. Make sure the bump stop stays on top of the leaf spring.
So now we can lower down our pole jack to lower our axle enough so that we can get our rear spacer in, and then we'll get our U-bolts installed and get our bracket on from underneath. So now get your dowel pins lined up, start raising this up. And now once you're at this point, you can grab your U-bolts, slide them in. On the rear side, make sure you go in between the axle and these lines. And then we'll grab our bracket. You might have to pinch your bolts together a little bit to get that to slide on. And then we can get our new washers and nuts for the bottom. Now take the washers and nuts included in the kit and thread those on. And now once you have all those thread on, we're gonna take a 22mm socket and tighten all of these down. I'm gonna go in an X-shaped pattern so that we tighten this down evenly. Now next we're gonna go on top of the frame rail. We have these 3 12mm bolts that we're gonna be removing. Our bracket for our remote reservoir is gonna be mounted using these 3 holes. Now this is just for the driver's side. On the other side, you're not gonna have these bolts. So there are 2 holes and they give you hardware with a bolt and then a nut for the bottom side that you're gonna use on that side. So grab a 12mm ratcheting wrench, loosen these up. Make sure you don't get your ratchet stuck in this one. And now I'm gonna have to switch over to a 12mm wrench here, so I don't wanna get my ratcheting wrench stuck underneath that lip. And now we're gonna install our bracket. Now this brake line bracket is gonna sandwich in between the frame and this bracket. So I'm gonna go in from the back to get my bolt through that hole. We're gonna start with that one that was the most difficult to remove because we have the least amount of space. And finally, you've got the one in the middle. So now we don't have access from the outside of the frame now because that bracket's there. So we're flipping around to the inside. We're gonna grab a 12mm wrench and finish fully tightening these bolts down. Now next we're gonna get our worm clamps installed onto our bracket in preparation of our shock and reservoir. We have these little slots underneath that we're gonna feed these through. So just go ahead and twist the screw on your worm clamp to the left until it separates. just like that. Slide that bottom through there. We'll just let it hang like that for now. Do the same thing for your other one. Slide that in, rotate it, and we'll just let that hang like that for now. So now we can install our shock. Now these aren't technically side specific, but our reservoir only has a logo on one side. So if you want the logo facing out, then they would be side specific. So now we're gonna put a bushing on, and then we're gonna slide that into our upper mount. And just let that reservoir hang for a second. Now once we have that in our upper mount, we're gonna take the bushing with the sleeve and slide that on. Press that down into place, press your shock up. Then we're gonna get this blue collar. You want the flat side facing down. And then we have a washer. Push up on your shock and then down on all that, and then thread your nut off. We're just gonna leave that a few threads for now. And now you can grab your reservoir, get your worm clamps around it. And now we're gonna be sliding this side into the gap in between these. Slide that in and then grab your flathead screwdriver. Start threading that in. Do the same thing on the other one. And now I'm gonna slide those screws up to the top for a cleaner look. And then you can go ahead and tighten these down. So now we're gonna get our lower shock into the mount. We've got this zip tie here that we're gonna take a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters to cut. Pull that out and then slide it into your mount. And then we're gonna have to raise up on our pole jack to get the hole to line up. Then we can start sliding our bolt through. Now we need to go a little bit higher for the other side. And now I'm going to grab a little pry bar just to get this the rest of the way in. And now I'm just going to rest that pry bar on the bolt head and just give it some taps with a rubber mallet. And then grab a side of a hammer, tap it the rest of the way through. Now take your washer and your nut, thread that on, and then grab a 17mm socket and wrench and tighten this down. Now we're gonna go back up top and take a 19mm ratcheting wrench to tighten down our nut. Now I removed our pole jack so that our shock is taking up the weight of our axle. That way the stud is less likely to spin when we're tightening it down. Next we need to install this brake line spacer on the driver's side of the axle. Now there's normally a bolt here. Ours is missing, so we don't have one to show to remove. So we're gonna put our spacer in there, and then we have this bolt with a flat washer included in the kit that we're gonna use to tighten it down. So put your bolt through the hole in the bracket, through the hole in the spacer. And then get this to line up with that hole on the axle. Now once you've got that bolt lined up in the hole, take a 13mm socket and tighten that down. Now on the front, we're gonna start with our front diff. We've got these spacers that are gonna go in between this cross member and our mount for our differential on both sides. We've got a 22mm bolt and a 19mm nut that we'll need to remove. We're going to be reusing this plate on our new bolt that's included in the kit. That's obviously longer to accommodate this spacer. Now before you go removing any bolts, you're going to want either a pole jack or a floor jack on the front diff so that this doesn't drop down on you. And then grab your 22mm socket and 19mm wrench and remove these bolts. And then grab your nut from the top and this plate, and now do that same thing on the other side. And then grab that nut, and now we can start lowering either your floor jack or your pole jack. And now you're going to take your new bolt, you're going to take that plate, slide that through, and then slide your spacer in. Slide your bolt through. And now I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. And now we have washers and nuts for a new bolt. Slide on that washer, followed by your nut. You might have to pull your bolt down a little bit to give you enough clearance to get that nut on. And then do that same thing on the other side. This one we have a lot more clearance on. And then we're just gonna grab that same 22mm socket and 19mm wrench. I'm just gonna raise up on my pole jack to get that nice and tight before I tighten this down. Now our new nut is going up to a 22mm. So grab a 22mm socket and wrench and tighten these down. Now before I fully crank down on this side, I'm gonna get this side raised up so we're tightening them down evenly. And then we'll go back to this one and fully tighten that down. So now we're gonna raise our strut up into our upper mount. We're using these bolts with flat washers going from the top down into our top head. So now we're just gonna drop that bolt through the top, get our hole lined up and get our thread started. And then thread in your other two bolts. We're just gonna leave these hand tight for now until we get this strut into our bottom mount. So now we need to get our strut into our lower mount. So we have this zip tie that we're gonna have to cut first. Cut that and pull it out. Slide that into your mount. Slide your bolt through. And then grab your flat washer and nut to thread onto the other side. And then take a 19mm socket and wrench and tighten that up. Now we're gonna go back up top and take a 14mm ratcheting wrench and tighten down those bolts. So next we're gonna do the fun part of reinstalling our upper control arm. We've got that very long bolt. I'm gonna get that up into our engine bay first, get that hanging out. And then I'll grab the upper control arm, get it started in that bushing first. Make sure this line is on the outside of that upper control arm. And then start sliding your bolt. So now I'm gonna get a pry bar onto the bolt head and then take a hammer and start tapping that in. And now we're hitting the other side, so we need to line that up and then get back at it. And then with that in place, grab your washer and nut for the other side. And now we're gonna leave that hand tight for now. We don't wanna tighten down bushings unless they're under load, because if you tighten it down when it's down here, then once you put weight on the vehicle, it's gonna pull up and you can tear your bushings. So we'll leave that now, do the rest of our install, and then come back and get that last. Next, we're gonna install our reservoir mount. This is gonna go on the factory sway bar mount location. Now this is gonna cover this whole area, so before I do that, I'm gonna reinstall this cover here. So we're just gonna press all of these clips into their holes. And then grab your bracket, slide it in on top of your sway bar. You're using the non-threaded holes on the bracket going into the factory threaded holes in the frame. And now grab an 8mm Allen socket and tighten those down. So now we can mount up our reservoir. So just bend it up and into that bracket. You want to make sure that line's going underneath the upper control arm. And then grab your worm clamps. Use a flathead to open those up. And then once you have them opened up, we've got a hole right here that we're going to pass that through. And that's going to go all the way around our bracket. We're going to do the same thing at the top here. And then pinch the two sides of your worm clamp together and use a flathead to start your threads here. And I'll do that same thing on your top one. And then I like to put my clamps at the top here for a nice clean look. So once you got them in place, just use that flathead and tighten those all the way down. Now at this point, you want to get caught up on the other side. We're going to be reusing our factory shackles for our sway bar, and we're going to be mounting it up to those brackets for the reservoirs. So now the forward facing side of our shackle is slotted. So I'm going to get the bolt and flat washer included in the kit and get my front thread started. And then I'll slide our shackle onto the sway bar, slide it into that hole, and then get my back hole lined up, thread my bolt in. Now before you tighten this down, you're gonna wanna do that same thing on the other side. I already went ahead and tightened that down. So now I'm gonna grab a 14mm socket, tighten this side down, and then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. And then repeat that process on the other side. Next, we're gonna connect our knuckle to our upper control arm, as well as our sway bar end link to our knuckle. So go ahead and lift up on your upper control arm. We're gonna press that down until we have enough stud to thread our nut onto. And then slide your end link into the knuckle. Thread that nut on. We're gonna take a 17mm socket, tighten down our end link. And now I'm gonna grab a 27mm wrench for our upper ball joint. Now we want to tighten this down until one of these slots in our castle nut lines up with the hole in the stud. Now if you've got it overlapping where you can't get your cotter pin through, you always want to tighten this, never loosen it up to get those holes to line up. Now we need to go a little bit more so we're not quite lined up. And that looks good. So now we're going to grab our cotter pin. I'm going to stick this in from the back to make it a little bit easier on myself. And now I'm going to grab the end of that with needle nose pliers, and I'm going to use a hammer to tap on the needle nose pliers to push that cotter pin through. And tap it the rest of the way through with a hammer. And now we just need to bend the ends of that cotter pin. Next we need to install this spacer for our bump stop. So we're gonna pull that out next. I've got some channel locks because I don't have a wrench or adjustable wrench that'll go that big. And then once you break it free, just thread it out. And now we're just gonna take that spacer, put it on the stud, thread that right back in. And tighten that down. And then while we're over here, we can reinstall our brake line bracket. Slide that back into place, thread your bolt in, and then grab a 12mm socket and tighten that down. Next, we're gonna have to remove this bracket off of our ABS wire, and we're gonna zip tie that up to our upper control arm. So grab yourself a flathead screwdriver to open that metal up, enough to get your wire out. And then we're just gonna use a couple zip ties, just to zip tie it to our upper control arm. I'm not gonna go crazy tight on these zip ties, so it still has a little bit of room to move around. And that'll keep it out of the way enough where it's not getting caught on anything, but still loose enough so that it can flex with the suspension moving around. So I'm gonna take a pair of scissors or diagonal cutters and just cut off the excess of those zip ties. So now I've got a pole jack underneath of our lower control arm that's putting a load on our suspension. We've got it compressed upwards. So now we can go ahead and tighten down our upper control arm. So take a 19mm socket and 19mm wrench and tighten that down. Now we're gonna put on our cover on the other side here. We're missing one of our clips, but we also have one right down here. So now to wrap up this wheel well, we're gonna reinstall our tie rod end. Thread on our nut, and then take a 19mm socket, tighten that down. Same thing as the castle nut on the upper control arm. You want that to line up. If it doesn't, go tighter, not looser. Now we're lined up pretty good. Slide your cotter pin in. And then grab your needle nose pliers and bend the tabs on that cotter pin to lock it in. Now you can repeat that whole process on the other side. Now next we're gonna reinstall our skid plate. So get it up onto those hooks up front first. Now once it's on those hooks, we are gonna have spacers for this mount back here since our mounts for our front diff are lower now. So these are gonna go on either side in the back. We're gonna use our normal hardware up front. Now go ahead and stick your bolt through, put your spacer there, raise this up, start threading that in. We're gonna do that same thing over here. And then reinstall your bolts up front like normal. Now tighten all of those down with your 12mm socket. So now that we're wrapped up with our install, I've got the wheel back on here. Before I put this on the ground, we have to grease our upper ball joint on our upper control arm. So grab your grease gun, push it down onto that fitting, and then give it a few pumps of grease. So now with that pressed on, I'm just gonna apply pressure on that fitting while I pump this with grease. And then you can pull off to the side. Pull that off, and then just take a microfiber towel and just clean off that excess grease on your fitting. And now repeat that same process on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Superlift 3-inch King Edition suspension lift kit for your 2005 to 23 Tacoma, excluding TRD Pro. Thank you for watching, and for all things Tacoma, keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.